Today I decided to do a video review on a cable for speakers. This is the Ricable Dedalus Mark II for speakers. This is different from the Dedalus Elite, which we have reviewed on Audiophile Heaven, and from the Invictus speaker reference. This is a cable priced at $670 US. I have to convert the price from euros. The price in US dollars is never stated on the website, so I have to do the conversion on the fly. This is the cable that doesn't make you fly, but actually keeps you grounded in the real world, with both the pocket-friendly pricing, but also the beautiful build quality and the more practical approach to cables than the other Ricable speaker cables. I'm saying a lot, but not enough this time around. So let's start with the cable. This is actually a bit thinner and a bit more flexible than the other Ricable cable for speakers, so I think it's the most practical one. Because Invictus speaker reference clearly had the sound, clearly was my favorite, but was also the thickest, heaviest and hardest to bend cable ever. So it required like a little bit of room for itself, which wasn't that practical. This one is like a traditional cable, just a bit better build and a bit pricier. As you can see, it is quite flexible, quite bendy, especially after the part where the two connectors go out of the wire. I think this is pretty important because a lot of people, even those who purchase expensive cables, have the speakers almost glued to the wall. They are really close to the wall. So you have to have a cable that has the ability to bend. The connectors are high quality spades, which are also gold plated. They are some of the highest quality connectors I've seen, especially since this is more affordable than the other cables. You would naturally expect a slight decrease in quality. What I'm seeing is the same Ricable quality. This can be ordered in different colors. This was drafted at random, so the company had the chance to do it any other color, but you know, they already had the blue speaker Invictus, the pink or peachy Dedalus Elite, and now we have the yellow, even orange Dedalus speaker Mark II. I have not heard the Mark I, so it is quite hard for me to compare them. From experience, what I can tell you is that the company states they improved quite a bit on the EMI and ERFI protection, or electromagnetic and radio frequency interference, so this is better sealed against those. The cable is much lighter, which I think is a strong positive. This is because when you get expensive audiophile cables, they tend to be quite heavy, so they pull on the speaker connectors and on the amplifier connectors quite a bit. Unless you can stabilize the cable, and I am not suggesting purchasing expensive audiophile cable lifters, just stabilizing it in some way, it is going to have some pull effect on the speaker connectors and it may either loosen them or downright break them. So it would be a good idea to get cables that are not that heavy, even though the heavier ones can sound quite good. Once again, I'm not suggesting anything crazy here. I am reviewing cables because I do hear a difference with every single analogy cable that I test. I should probably try to test some digital cables to see if I hear a difference, like just for experiment. I'm not expecting to hear a difference with digital cables, which is why I avoided doing that. I personally don't believe that a digital cable can make a difference unless it acts like some kind of isolator. Then it would make sense, because if it isolates the source and the transport from noise, if the transporter is noisy, especially a computer like I have in the back, and if it is noisy, then it should make sense that a digital cable has some kind of effect. But then there are galvanic isolators that you can purchase, then you don't need a high-end cable. So back to the cables. The Ricable speaker Mark II is well made. This is made by hand in Italy. It is made to order. You can order them in any length you need, in any color you need. As I said, this is drafted at absolute random. It can be ordered in other colors. And when you order them, they have one of the longest warranties out there. Ricable really believes in the quality of their work. I actually believe as well, and this is the cable because we have to reach the sonic part. How does it improve the sound? This has the most natural sound of the Ricable cables, or at least the warmest. It has the smoothest treble, the richest and the deepest sounding midrange, and the bassiest, most bloomy bass. It has a slower speed to the bass, so the impulse response tends to be a bit slowed down, which creates the sensation that the bass is a bit bigger, but also a bit slower. So it creates a slow, romantic type of bass that fills in the space a bit more, giving the feeling of a much wider soundstage. This enhances the feeling of instrument separation. It gives you the feeling that music is happening in a much larger space because the bass tends to be a bit slower. The mid-range is also a bit slower. It tends to slow down on the impulse response of most musical notes. Having a bit of extra added delay or a longer decay, as we call it in music, tends to give you the feeling that music is larger. It gives that feeling of grandiose. Also, it really enhances the feeling of detail and of resolution by smoothing out the hard edges in music. When I'm listening to electronic music, which has a lot of synths and a lot of square waves, I typically hear the harshness, the edginess in the square waves. With a cable like the Ricable Dedalus speaker Mark II, I tend to hear less of the aggressive side, and I still hear the detail and the resolution, but I don't get quite that much harshness in each instrument. And that tends to be very pleasing to the ear. It tends to give me the feeling that I'm listening to a more natural track. I can focus more on the actual details presented in music, and just music pops up a bit more. The mid-range is organic, which means that it's very cohesive. There is no hard edge, there is no shrillness or coldness. Organic is a combination of sounding vivid and sounding warm. And this is how the cable sounds like. It's quite vivid. It brings forward details, especially in the upper mid-range. You tend to hear guitars, you tend to hear slight details quite a bit better than with other cables, especially than entry-level cables. Typically when I'm comparing it with super entry-level cables. I was actually avoiding doing this, but this is the entry-level cable I keep talking about, both in my written reviews and when I compare this cable to others. This is a cable that I purchased from Amazon. It has a name, it surely has a name, and I can likely make an effort to find a name for you. But the long story short is that it is the most recommended copper cable that they have. It's super affordable, like really entry-level stuff. It's good, the sound is very good. I had cheap cables. I really had. I still have. This is how I keep them. This is the most entry-level cable that I have around the house for speakers. Like, this is the cheapest one. I can tell the difference between this and the pricier Amazon one right away. I have no idea what this is called. I have received it together with a pair of speakers when a friend gave me the speakers to work with them, and he told me that he doesn't need the cable anymore. Somehow, I'm a bit of a hoarder, you might say, at least especially when it comes to electronic stuff. I don't throw anything away. I tend to keep everything. So I kept it. I have used it for referencing, and this is atrocious in sound. So I don't know what it's named. It's really thin. It's made of copper, but you can already see that the copper is browning a bit. It's losing color. It also has a memory effect. The problem is that the sound is very constrained in dynamics, not very resolute. The resolution is quite poor. It's extremely sensitive to ambient airflow, so you can hear a lot of interference, especially when the GPU is doing hard activity. For example, playing a music video. This is a long story, but I'm using a real-time upscaler when watching music videos. So my video watching is a bit more GPU intensive. If you've heard about Matchy video render, if not, I may make a video, I may not. I was very enthusiastic at first when I discovered it and when I started using it, but then I learned that most people don't have the type of computer that can handle it. So I kinda just kept using it, but don't mention it. At any rate, this cable is a disaster. It is a Hama 2x250 QMM 0.15 acoustic connection made in Germany. So even the country where it's made doesn't have such a high effect on the final result. And I want to make a big point out of this. It's not about the country, it's not about the origin, and it's not about the geometry, although I don't think this has any specific geometry. So after I was done with that, I decided that I needed some higher quality cable. And I purchased this from Amazon. It is named
Cable Direct Speaker Cable made in Germany, pure copper, 2 or 6 mm squared. Hi-Fi audio speaker cable for speakers with polarity marking.
Nice. This costed me 58 euros or about $75. And this is a high quality cable, entry level but still high quality. I also purchased those golden spade connectors. Also no brand, this is not important. When going from the super cheap cable that I had to this one, to the Cable Direct cable, I felt like it was a huge improvement. The soundstage became much cleaner, the sound didn't have all the interference that the other cable had, even though this doesn't seem to be shielded in any way. There is no shielding on it. Even so, it doesn't seem to inherit as much noise. The sound just became better, more impactful, the soundstage is better, the detail and resolution is better, the sound is generally much cleaner. The dynamic range is where things improved the most. And once again, this was an experiment that I did over a number of months, I would say. So I'm pretty sure about the findings of this one. And when I reviewed the Ricable for speakers, it was also a huge improvement. Things changed drastically. So although this is a really good cable and I could recommend the cable direct from Amazon, Ricable makes cables that sound much better and also cost quite a bit more. The fact that they sound better should be expected. They do a lot of research in what sounds better, why, how to make them, and at the end of the day, they do succeed in providing us with a good product. Speaking of the said product, this cannot be coiled too tightly because both the shielding and the cable is quite sturdy, so you can't really coil it more than this because you risk breaking it. This cable sounds the cleanest, most dynamic. It has the best resolution of the entry cables. Compared to the pricier Dedalus Speaker Elite, it sounds quite a bit warmer, thicker and smoother. The Dedalus Speaker Elite sounds a bit more detailed, brighter, a bit more neutral. Also, it tends to have a wider soundstage and a more defined instrument presentation. The Dedalus Speaker Elite surely is the most defined of them. And then we have the Invictus speaker reference, which I can't even bring myself to get for the video. It's heavy and thick. But Invictus is the best sounding of them all. It's the most dynamic, it has the best resolution, and its effect is quickly apparent. If you're not a cable believer and you feel like you want to contradict me, Ricable actually allows you to purchase those, to test, and then to return them free of charge. So you may just want to purchase them to test for yourself and to see if you like them. See if you find anything, see if they sound the same to you. I always say this, but when doing an experiment, especially in science, it's a good idea to test. Don't use just the theory. Test it. Test and see if the test confirms the theory. If the test indicates something else, then the theory was wrong. You need to understand this. The scientific method doesn't rely on forcing the theory on the actual results in the experiment. You should experiment, and then the results of the experiment should be explained by a theory. Otherwise, you are just forcing yourself into a belief system. I don't want you to believe that they sound different because I say so. I want you to test some cables, see if they sound different to you. If you can't really hear the difference, purchase the cheapest one. Like, I still have it here, it's really thin and frail. You can go with this if you don't feel a difference. It is a good idea to be respectful of both those that believe and those that don't believe in cable differences. I was in the camp that never believed in cable differences until I heard it. At the end of the day, the question of whether you should purchase the Dedalus Speaker Mark II remains. This is a gray area for me. I find it easier to recommend the Dedalus Speaker Elite because the increase in resolution doesn't result in such a high increase in price. Like this is 670 euros or US dollars, and then the Dedalus Speaker Elite is 950 US dollars. If you can already make about 700 US dollars, you likely could save up until the Dedalus Speaker Elite. And then there's the Invictus speaker reference, which is the best one, but that one is quite pricier. So that one is 1,500 US dollars. So in that situation, it's a bit pricey to say get that one. It's a steep price for a cable, especially if you don't have high-end speakers. The customer base that would actually purchase it is quite small. So for most people, I think that the Dedalus Speaker Elite would be the most resolute but best sounding, but at the same time at 1,000 US dollars it's a bit steep in pricing. So this one, the Dedalus Speaker Mark II, sounds about the same. It's not very far off, it's quite similar, but also 200 US dollars less pricey. And like with every other Ricable cable, you can configure the core. Take advantage of this. Maybe you don't want the orange and yellow color, maybe you want something else. You can get it in brown, in silver, in white, in anything you want. Just get something that you enjoy. Don't forget to have fun. Don't take life too seriously. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye!